What do you see as the continuing barriers to reducing the numbers of animals used in research today? And if in your response you could specifically address the issue of breeding colonies and whether those are in fact contributing to high numbers without perhaps a corresponding benefit.
Well, if you look at large animal use, then those numbers have really, they've declined over the years in sort of a straight line and fashion. And the use of large animals is, I think science is driving those numbers in a way that's very different than it's driving the numbers in the rodent side, which I'll get to. But I think that really science and cost is driving down the use of large animals in a progressive way. Where the question has come up in the public's mind in rodents, there's I think a legitimate criticism of the certainly there was a legitimate criticism of the large numbers of animals that need to be used in the production of the animals which have the unique genotype that's of interest scientifically. And especially in the early days of transgenic colonies where investigators learned about the development of transgenic mice, but they may not have had huge expertise in maintaining the kinds of colonies that it takes to develop these animals and then to support the animals to generate the ones which are genetically interesting for scientific studies. And as a result of that, there were really huge colony sizes, and it was very difficult to tell whether it was relevant to have all those animals or to not have those animals. And that discussion replayed itself in institution over institution. One of the very positive results out of that, and of pressing investigators continually on justifying their numbers, was that investigators began to look more critically at what the people in their laboratories are doing, and they began to look at the costs associated with using those huge numbers of animals. And they at least began on an intermittent, perhaps sporadic basis of pushing their staffs to keep those animals at a minimum. Now that still wasn't entirely effective, and the reason why it wasn't is because a lot of times their staff, they may have had good intention, but they themselves were not necessarily particularly well trained. And the really interesting thing which now has happened is that this has become entrenched enough in the broad discussion within the industry that when the guide was rewritten, there was a recommendation in the 2010, the 8th edition of the Guide for the Care and Use of Laboratory Animals, suggesting that those people who maintain large rodent colonies for the purpose of generating genetically interesting animals, that those people should have a training and education in proper colony management to minimize those numbers. The other thing that the continuous discussion has done, and the need for space so that others can do their new creative ideas in some new animal model, is that institutions are beginning to realize that it's not only costly to keep them on the shelf, there's potentially jeopardy to the animal and the future of the animal. If there's a catastrophe in the institution and something happens and the animals in a room die, then you lose that valuable line and you have to start over again. And so that prompted people to get animals out of the cage and back stored as frozen embryo or as sperm. And that's really improved the circumstances quite a bit. And so it's been a combination. It's been the fact that the IACUC would relentlessly ask this nuisance question as perceived by investigators. And then it was the fact that they responded somewhat reluctantly and then with more sophistication within their own staff. And then there have been all these technological developments which can reduce the numbers of animals on the shelves. And I would note that that's become even more true. It's now so easy to develop a transgenic mouse that people are willing to do the study and then retire the strain or remove the strain, knowing that if they ever had to get back to it for scientific purposes, they probably could find it elsewhere, they could regenerate it. And then here, just within the past few months, there have been new technologies to develop transgenics, and some are so quick, easy, and accurate that it's going to be trivial for investigators to get the genetic model that they need. So it's a problem that was solved first by nagging and then by science.